The young billionaire is arrested in front of everyone. But homeless twin girls shout, "He didn't do anything. We saw who did it." When they start to speak, everyone is shocked. The lights in the ballroom shone intensely over crystal glasses and diplomatic smiles. Noah Crane adjusted his bow tie while shaking hands with influential figures in the city. The annual fundraiser for the Horizon Foundation was packed with politicians, business people, and celebrities, all gathered for a noble cause Noah had championed for years. "Mr. Crane, this year's numbers are remarkable," the mayor commented, raising his glass. "Your contributions to schools in the South District have changed the lives of hundreds of children." Noah just smiled, uncomfortable with praise but pleased with results. He was only 35 and had already turned the tech company he inherited into a powerhouse that balanced profit with social responsibility. It was no surprise that Business Times magazine had put him on last month's cover, calling him the philanthropist of the future. "The credit goes to the team," he replied, modest as always, "and to the partnerships we've built together." That was when he noticed something strange. 3 men in dark suits entered the ballroom, discreet but determined. Their eyes scanned the room until they found Noah. Eye contact lasted only a second, but it was enough to send a chill down his spine. Something was wrong. The cheerful buzz of the event continued, but now it seemed distant to his ears. The men walked toward him, ignoring waiters and guests. Noah looked around, confused. Could it be just paranoia? An unexpected meeting? "It wasn't Noah Crane?" asked the tallest of them, his voice slicing through the surrounding conversation. "Yes. Agent Pearson, FBI." The man briefly flashed a badge. "You're under arrest for money laundering and bribing public officials." The silence that followed seemed made of glass, fragile and cutting. Conversations stopped as if someone had turned off the sound. Glasses froze in midair. All eyes turned toward them. Cell phone cameras were raised. "There must be a mistake," Noah said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "There's no mistake, sir. Please put your hands behind your back." When the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, reality crashed down on him. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. The people who admired him just seconds ago now watched with a mix of shock and snap judgments. "Noah Crane, you have the right to remain silent." The agent's voice droned on, mechanical, as Noah was led outside. Flashes went off. A member of the press, who had been covering the charity event, was already broadcasting live. Noah's face, normally poised and confident, was now pale, his expression frozen in disbelief. "Please, listen," he tried to speak, but was cut off. "Anything you say can be used against you in court." Outside, a small crowd had already gathered. The news had spread like wildfire. The man who stood as an example of ethical conduct was now being taken away like a common criminal. Among the onlookers gathering on the sidewalk, 2 small figures stood out not by their presence, but by their agitation. Lily and Leia, in worn-out coats and messy hair, pushed and squeezed between adults to get closer. "Let us through," Lily shouted, her childish voice lost in the chaos. The girls, known only by newspaper vendors and diner owners in the area as the twins from the alley, had eyes widened with urgency. They knew something no one else did. As Noah passed, handcuffed, through the makeshift police barrier, Leia managed to slip between 2 officers. Mister in the suit," she shouted, stretching her tiny hand toward him. A police officer pushed her back with a rough gesture, not even looking at her dirty face. No one cared about the testimony of homeless kids. "He didn't do anything. We saw who did it," the twins shouted together, their small voices rising above the tumult for a brief moment. But their words were swallowed by the noise of the crowd. No one paid attention. The reporters were too busy capturing the moment Noah lowered his head to enter the police vehicle. The onlookers were too absorbed in the spectacle of a powerful man's downfall. Inside the vehicle, Noah tried to organize his thoughts. How was this possible? Bribery, money laundering. He mentally reviewed every contractor, every transaction of recent months, searching for something that might have been misinterpreted. Nothing made sense. "May I at least know what evidence you have against me?" he asked the agent sitting in front of him. "Your attorney will receive all the details," came the terse reply. On the other side of the dark window, Noah couldn't see them, But Lily and Leia were still there. Small hands pressed against the glass for a brief moment before the vehicle drove away. "He didn't see us," Leia murmured, frustrated. "Nobody ever does." The girls stood on the sidewalk as the crowd dispersed, absorbing the spectacle they had just witnessed. The flashing lights of police cars grew distant, leaving them again in the familiar darkness of the streets. "What do we do now?" asked Lily, squeezing her sister's hand. The cold night wind stirred their hair, reminding them they needed to find shelter. To most people there, that well-dressed man who had just been taken away meant nothing, just another rich person in trouble. Another scandal for the tabloids, but for the twins it was different. They knew the truth. They had seen something no one else had seen. "We gotta help him," Leia decided, with the kind of determination only children possess, the kind that hasn't yet learned to doubt itself. Lily nodded, though she knew how hard it would be. Who would believe them? Two street girls, Ma, with no family, no address, nothing but their own words. "Let's go back to the alley," she whispered. "We need to think." They walked through darker and darker streets, invisible to the hurried eyes of passers-by. On phone screens, in store window TVs, in lively bar conversations, Noah Crane's name was already circulating alongside words like criminal and corrupt. No one knew that the truth was walking in the shadows of the city, in the form of two small children who had witnessed something too important to be ignored. At the central police station, Noah was photographed, fingerprinted, and placed in a holding cell. His attorney, contacted at the last minute, promised to be there first thing in the morning. "This is absurd, completely absurd," the lawyer shouted over the phone. "You're the last person in this city I'd imagine involved in something like this." Noah simply asked him to do his job and find out exactly what he was being accused of. Alone in the cell, he allowed himself a moment of genuine panic. His reputation, so carefully built over the years, was now in ruins. The children his foundation helped, the projects underway, everything was at risk. And there was something else, something that bothered him, but he couldn't fully process. In the midst of the confusion, he had heard children's voices, tiny voices saying he was innocent, that they had seen something. Who were those kids? He murmured to himself, trying to recall their faces in the chaos of that moment. On the other side of the city, huddled under an old blanket in their hideout in the alley, Lily and Leia also couldn't sleep. The day's events replayed in their minds: the man with the black briefcase, the tense conversation in front of the building, the golden watch. And then, hours later, the wrong man's arrest. "Tomorrow we have to tell someone," Leia said, adjusting the blanket over her sister's shoulders. "But who will believe us?" Lily asked, her voice small in the darkness. It was a question neither had an answer to. Not yet. While the city slept, the truth remained awake, alive in the minds of two small children that nobody wanted to hear, and of an innocent man everyone was ready to condemn. Night fully enveloped the city when Lily and Leia finally arrived at the alley they called home. It was a narrow space between two old buildings, where stacked cardboard boxes created a small shelter from rain and wind. It wasn't much, but it was the only place they felt safe. "Are you hungry?" Lily asked, pulling a slightly squashed piece of bread from inside her coat. She'd managed to grab it from a cafe table at the corner. Leia nodded, settling on the makeshift mattress of old blankets. They split the bread in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. The arrest scene still flashed vividly in their minds. "Do you think that man will stay in jail forever?" Leia finally asked, her voice low as if the walls could hear. Lily shrugged. "I don't know. Adults don't really care about what's right." It was a lesson they had learned too early. After their mother died and their father disappeared, no one cared where two small, undocumented girls without relatives would go. The big city was their only option, and in it, they learned to become invisible. But we saw Lily. We saw everything. Leia moved closer to her sister, her eyes shining in the dark. That nice man did nothing wrong. Lily knew what her sister was talking about. 3 days ago, while looking for food near the financial district, they had witnessed something strange. It was at that building with the shiny windows, right? Lily tried to recall. The tall man with the dark coat. And the golden watch, Leia added. It sparkled a lot whenever he moved his arm. They looked at each other, silently confirming they remembered the same details. He was angry, Lily continued, talking loudly on the phone. And then the other man came with a black briefcase. Leia hugged her knees, as if trying to protect herself from the memory. They argued. That day had been just like any other for the twins. Invisible to most people, they roamed the city, watching everything with their keen eyes. Sometimes they made a few coins helping carry groceries or wiping windshields at traffic lights. But that day, they found something better, a restaurant throwing away still edible food at closing time. It was while waiting behind the restaurant that they saw the two men talking tensely in front of the commercial building across the street. He said, "I won't do that, it's illegal," Lily recalled, imitating the deep voice she had heard. And the other man said, "Either you do it, or I'll make it look like you did," Leia added, narrowing her eyes like the man with the briefcase. After that, the man with the briefcase handed something to the other, papers maybe, and walked away, looking satisfied. The other stood there, holding the papers as if they were too heavy. The girls didn't fully understand what they had seen, but they knew how to recognize a threat. Living on the streets, they had learned to read expressions, sense danger, figure out who might hurt them and who might help. And today they arrested the wrong man, Lily murmured, finishing her piece of bread. The one at that fancy party wasn't the same guy with the black briefcase. But they look alike, Leia observed. Same height, similar hair. Yeah, but not the same person, Lily insisted. The briefcase guy walked differently. And the watch, remember the watch? Leia nodded, closing her eyes to picture it better. Golden, big, really shiny. The man who got arrested wasn't wearing a watch. A noise at the entrance of the alley made them instinctively shrink back. Years on the streets had taught them to hide quickly. They stayed still, breathing softly, until the sound of footsteps faded away. "I'm scared, Lily," Leia confessed once silence returned. "What if that briefcase man finds out we saw him? What if he comes after us?" Lily hugged her sister. She was older by exactly 7 minutes, and she took that responsibility very seriously. Nobody knows we exist. Remember, we're invisible. That was their protective mantra. The invisibility that hurt them so much also served as a shield. But now that invisibility had become a problem, how could they help the man who had been wrongly arrested if nobody saw them, if nobody listened? "We have to tell someone," Leia said, surprisingly resolute for someone so small. "Who's going to believe 2 street kids?" Lily sighed, running her hand through her tangled hair. "They wouldn't even let us get close today." Silence fell between them again. They knew it was the truth. To the world, they were just shadows. Urban ghosts people preferred not to see. No home, no family, no voice. "What about that lady at the cafe?" Leia suggested after a while. "The one who always gives us chocolate." "She's just a waitress and she can't do anything." "What about that police officer? The one who smiled at us that day?" Lily shook her head. "She works for the government. She'll trust her colleagues, not us." Once again, silence. Outside, the city continued its nightlife. Cars passed by, music played somewhere in a distant bar. People returned to their warm homes. Meanwhile, in that makeshift shelter, 2 small children carried a secret too big to ignore. "There has to be someone," insisted Leia, her eyes growing heavy with sleep. "Someone who'll believe us." Lily adjusted the blanket over her sister, protecting her from the intensifying cold. "Tomorrow we'll look for that someone," she promised, though she had no idea who it might be. Lying side by side, the twins looked at the patch of sky visible between buildings. A few stars insisted on shining, despite all the city's light pollution. "That man seemed nice," Leia murmured, almost asleep. "The one who got arrested. He was helping kids." "Yeah," Lily agreed. "Maybe he would have helped us too if he wasn't in jail." "Then we have to get him out," Leia concluded, with the simple, direct logic of children. Lily smiled in the dark. Her sister had always been that way, determined, hopeful, believing good things could happen even when everything said otherwise. "We'll try," she whispered, more to herself than to Leia, who was already softly snoring. She closed her eyes, thinking about the next day. They would need to be brave. They would need to make someone listen. They would need to turn their invisibility into a voice. Sleep finally came. Lulled by the distant hum of the city and the warmth of her sister's body, her only constant comfort in their uncertain lives. While they slept, the news of Noah Crane's arrest was already dominating all the channels. His photo appeared on screens of every size, always accompanied by words like fraud, corruption, and betrayal. The truth slept in a dark alley, guarded by two children the world preferred not to see. Lorena Martinez turned off the TV with a frustrated sigh. Yet another sensationalist report about Noah Crane, filled with speculation and devoid of facts. 48 hours after his arrest, and no one seemed interested in investigating beyond the official narrative. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked around her small apartment. The walls were covered with newspaper clippings, awards she'd won, stories she'd written, cases she'd uncovered. A bright past that cruelly contrasted with her murky present. 15 years of a career just to end up writing about celebrity diets, she muttered to herself, taking the last sip of cold coffee. At 42, Lorena was no longer the rising star of investigative journalism. A controversial expose on political corruption 3 years ago had cost her dearly. The powerful figure she exposed sued the newspaper, and even though the evidence was true, the pressure was too great. Lorena was never formally fired, that would have stirred more scandal, but she was gradually sidelined from major stories and relegated to shallow pieces and lifestyle columns. The house she once owned in an upscale neighborhood was traded for this one-bedroom apartment downtown. Cheaper, and ironically, closer to the real stories unfolding on the streets. She glanced at the open laptop on the table. The screen showed the draft of her next column, 10 great spots for happy hour in the city. She slammed the lid shut, unable to continue with such triviality. Her phone rang. It was Marcus, her current editor. "Lorena, where's that piece on bars?" "The deadline's in 2 hours." "I'm finishing it," she lied, running her hand through her dark hair that now showed a few strands of gray. "But I was thinking of proposing something else." The sigh on the other end of the line was almost audible. "We're not touching the Crane case, and if that's what you're thinking, why not? It's the biggest story in the city." "Exactly. Everyone's covering it. What could you possibly add?" Lorena hesitated. What had been tormenting her for 2 days wasn't easy to explain without sounding crazy. "I was there, Marcus, at the moment of the arrest. You and 200 other people, including 20 journalists. I saw something different." Lorena closed her eyes, trying to structure her thoughts. 2 kids. Girls, shouting that he was innocent, that they saw who did it. There was silence on the other end, followed by a humorless laugh. "Street kids, Lorena, that's what you want to base a story on. Since when do beggars become reliable sources?" Lorena felt her face burn. It was precisely this kind of attitude that increasingly distanced her from today's journalism. Superficial, prejudiced, uninterested in truth. "They might know something," she insisted. "Look, I've read the police report. The evidence against Crane is solid. Signed documents, bank transfers, witnesses. It's an open and shut case. Since when do we accept the police version without question? Whatever happened to verify, verify, and verify again?" Marcus let out a long sigh. "Lorena, you're talented. You always were. But this obsession with conspiracy is hurting your career. Believe me, I'm saying this as a friend. Send in the piece on bars by the end of the day, okay? And forget about those kids." The call ended before she could respond. Lorena threw her phone on the couch and got up, restless. She walked to the window overlooking the busy street. The voices of those girls wouldn't leave her head. "He didn't do anything. We saw who did it." It was just a moment, a flash in the midst of chaos, but there was something so genuine in that shout that it hit her like a punch. It wasn't an adult seeking attention or stirring chaos. It was children, far too young to comprehend the implications of what they said, but old enough to recognize injustice. Lorena grabbed her jacket and a small camera. She didn't need Marcus's approval. If there was a story, she would find it, and if there wasn't, at least she would have tried. She owed it to herself, to the journalism she still believed in, and to those voices no one else seemed to have heard. For 2 days, Lorena combed the area around where the arrest happened. She spoke with security guards, waiters, street vendors, anyone who might have noticed the girls. Some people vaguely remembered 2 girls begging, but no one knew where to find them. Late in the afternoon of the second day, exhausted and nearly giving up, she stopped by a corner diner for coffee. While waiting for her order, she overheard the waitress talking to the cook. The twins showed up again today, gave them the rest of a sandwich, poor things. Lorena lifted her head, suddenly alert. "Excuse me," she interrupted. "Did you mention twins?" The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, nodded. "2 little girls who come by here sometimes, always together, always wearing the same worn clothes. I give them food when I can." "Do you know where they stay? It's important." The woman eyed her warily. "I'm a journalist," Lorena explained, showing her press card, already faded but still valid. "I think these girls witnessed something important, something that could help an innocent man." The waitress hesitated, but something in Lorena's expression seemed to convince her. "There's an abandoned market 3 blocks from here. Sometimes I see them going in there late in the afternoon. But be gentle, they're skittish, and if you mean them any harm—" "Never," Lorena assured, leaving a generous tip on the counter. "Thank you." "Really?" The abandoned market stood like an urban ghost among newly renovated buildings. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, and a large rusty padlock on the main door that didn't stop people from entering through the sides. Lorena circled the building until she found an opening, a partially torn metal panel, leaving just enough space to slip through. The interior was damp and dark, with little light coming through the high windows. Empty, rusted shelves created a maze of metal and shadows. "Hello?" she called, her voice echoing in the empty space. "Is anyone here? I won't hurt you." "I just want to talk." Silence. Lorena moved carefully, trying not to trip over debris on the floor. Something moved in the shadows, too quick to identify. A rat, maybe. Or maybe not. "I saw you," she said loudly. "On the night that man was arrested. You shouted that he was innocent, that you saw who did it." "I believe you." More silence, but there was a different quality to it now, as if someone were listening very carefully. "My name is Lorena. I'm a journalist. I want to help, if I can." A whisper came from somewhere to her right, then another, like a brief argument. Lorena stayed still, waiting. Finally, 2 small figures emerged from behind a stack of wooden crates. Identical girls, with tousled brown hair and clothes far too big for their thin bodies. "You were there," Lorena said softly, recognizing them. "The night of the arrest." The girls looked at each other, clearly deciding whether to trust her. One took a small step forward. "How do we know you're not his friend?" she asked, voice firm despite the visible fear in her eyes. "Whose friend?" "The bad man. The one with the briefcase." Lorena felt a chill run down her spine. They really did know something. "I don't know any man with a briefcase," she answered honestly. "I'm trying to find out the truth about what happened, just like you." The girl who seemed to take the lead nodded slowly, assessing her. "I'm Lily," she said finally. "And this is Leia." "Those are beautiful names," Lorena smiled. "Do you live here?" The twins exchanged looks again. "We hide here sometimes," Leia replied, her voice gentler than her sister's. "It's safer than the alley when it rains." Lorena felt a pang in her chest. So young, and they already knew so much about survival. "May I sit?" she asked, indicating the floor. "My legs are tired from searching for you." The girls nodded silently. Lorena sat on the floor, placing her bag beside her. She didn't want to intimidate them by standing. "I saw you yelling that night of the arrest," Lorena began. "You said the man was innocent, that you saw who did it. What exactly did you see?" Lily glanced at Leia, who nodded encouragingly. "We were looking for food 3 days before," Lily started, "near those big glass buildings. In the financial district. I don't know what it's called, lots of people in suits." Lorena nodded, letting her continue. "We saw 2 men arguing. One was angry on the phone, he had a black briefcase. It wasn't the man who was arrested," Leia spoke up, completing her sister's account. "He had a big golden watch, really shiny. and he was talking loud, saying bad things. What kind of bad things? Lorena asked gently. Something about money, and about making it look like somebody else did something, Lily said, furrowing her brow in an effort to remember. We didn't understand everything. And you're sure it wasn't the man who was arrested, Noah Crane? Absolutely sure, they both affirmed in unison. But they look alike, Leah added. Like brothers. Lorena felt her heart rate spike. Noah Crane did have a brother, Caleb Crane. They worked together in the family business, if she remembered correctly. Have you seen that man again since that day? Lily shook her head no, but Leah seemed uncertain. I think I saw him on TV, she said timidly. In a show. Which show? Don't know the name. He was talking about the man who got arrested, saying sad things. A chill ran down Lorena's spine. Caleb Crane had given several interviews since his brother's arrest, expressing deep regret and shock over the betrayal. He said he was going to take care of the company now, Lily went on, while the other guy is in jail. It was all making terrible sense to Lorena, an older brother framing the younger to take over the family business. It sounded cliché, but clichés exist for a reason. They happen often. You two are very observant, Lorena praised them, and very brave for trying to help. Few adults would do the same. The girls offered shy smiles at the compliment. Lorena realized it was probably rare for them to hear anything positive about themselves. What do you think about showing me where you saw these men? We could go together. Their smiles vanished, replaced by fear. What if he sees us? Leah asked, voice trembling slightly. He won't see you, Lorena assured. We'll just watch from a distance, and then I promise to take you both for something tasty to eat. What do you say? The mention of food made their eyes light up, but there was still hesitation. Finally, Lily spoke for them both. Okay, but if we see him, we run. Deal. And the financial district was nearly empty at dusk. Most executives had already gone home, leaving only security guards and cleaning crews in the towering glass buildings. It happened there. Lily pointed discreetly to a building on the corner, right by that door. Lorena observed the place. It was the headquarters of Crane Enterprises, the empire now solely under Caleb's control. And where were you standing? Behind those dumpsters, Leah indicated. We were waiting for the restaurant to throw out leftovers. Lorena took out her small camera and snapped photos discreetly, trying to visualize the scene as the girls had described it. The pieces were beginning to fit, but she still lacked solid proof. Testimony from children wouldn't be enough to overturn a formal charge, especially against someone so powerful. Look, there are cameras up there, she noted, spotting security devices around the building. They might have recorded the conversation. Is that good or bad? Lily asked, clearly worried. Good. Very good, Lorena smiled. It means we can prove what you saw. While they spoke, a dark car pulled up to the front of the building. Lorena instinctively pulled the girls behind a column. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out of the vehicle. That's him, Leah whispered, gripping her sister's hand. The man with the briefcase. Lorena looked carefully. Caleb Crane. She had never seen him in person, only in photos and news stories. The resemblance to Noah was striking, but there was something else, an edge in his gaze, a tension in his shoulders, and on his wrist, a golden watch shining under the streetlight. Let's go, Lorena said quickly, guiding the girls away. I've seen enough. At a nearby diner, Lorena watched the twins devour burgers with a hunger that tugged at her heart. While they ate, she thought about the next step. She had a lead and witnesses, but she also had a powerful opponent who wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone threatening his plans. Where do you sleep? She asked casually, trying not to sound invasive. In the alley behind the shoe store, Lily answered between bites. We have a spot there. All by yourselves? The girls nodded as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And your parents. A heavy silence fell over the table. Leah lowered her eyes to her plate. Lily was the one who answered, her voice suddenly older than her years. Our mom died. How Dad vanished. I'm so sorry, Lorena said sincerely. How long have you been on the streets? Lily shrugged. Not sure. Since last winter. More than a year, then. 2 children alone, surviving on their own, invisible to a system that should have protected them. A decision formed in Lorena's mind, so clear and certain it surprised her. You can't go back to that alley," she said firmly. "It's not safe, especially now." "Why?" Leah asked, alarmed. "Because you're important witnesses. If Caleb Crane finds out you saw what he did, it could be dangerous." "But we don't have anywhere else," Lily said pragmatically, as usual. Lorena took a deep breath. What she was about to offer was completely impulsive, probably reckless, and would definitely complicate her already complicated life. But seeing those dirty faces and eyes far too wise for their age, she knew she had no other choice. "You can stay with me," she offered, "for now. Until we figure this out." The girls looked at her warily, accustomed to never trusting an offer that seemed too good to be true. "Why?" Lily asked bluntly. "Why would you help us?" Lorena could have mentioned the story, the chance to rebuild her career, the opportunity to take down a powerful criminal. All were true but incomplete. "Because you had the courage to shout the truth when everyone else believed the lie," she answered honestly. "And because no one else seems willing to protect you." The twins looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations only twins seem able to have. Finally, both nodded. "You trusted me with your story," Lorena said, placing her hands on the table. "Now trust me with your safety." After a moment of hesitation, 4 small hands reached out over hers, a silent pact formed between a reporter who still believed in truth and 2 children who never had a reason to believe in anything. Lorena's apartment had turned into an improvised investigation center. The walls, previously covered only with old newspaper clippings, now displayed a mosaic of information about the Crane case, photographs, clippings, notes, and colorful lines connecting different elements. Anyone walking in would think they'd entered the office of an obsessive detective or a madwoman. Lorena preferred the former label, though she suspected many would choose the latter. 3 days had passed since she found Lily and Leah in the abandoned market. 3 days of discovery and planning. Choosing not to immediately publish a story about the girl's testimony wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Marcus would dismiss it as a childish fantasy, she muttered to herself while flipping through another stack of documents. And worse, it would warn Caleb. Caleb Crane. The name now dominated her thoughts. The older brother, always in the shadow of the more successful and charismatic Noah, or so the media profiles claimed. Now, with Noah in jail, Caleb had emerged as the new leader of the Crane Empire. Far too convenient to be a coincidence. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Clara Wilson, an old contact in the local district attorney's office with whom she'd kept in touch over the years. "Got what you asked for. Meet at our usual cafe in an hour." Lorena glanced at the clock, 7:30 in the morning. She quickly got ready and left. The usual cafe was actually a small diner far from places frequented by journalists and corporate lawyers. Clara was already waiting at a corner table, a manila envelope in front of her. "I'm taking unnecessary risks for you, Lorena," the woman said instead of greeting her. "My boss would kill me if he found out." Clara worked at the DA's office, with privileged access to active case documents. They had an old friendship from the days when Lorena was still considered a respected journalist. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Lorena took a sip of coffee the waitress had just brought. "What did you find out?" Clara pushed the envelope across the table. "The evidence against Noah Crane is solid, at least on the surface. Signed documents, bank transfers, emails. The kind of thing that convinces juries. But," Lorena sensed there was a but there are inconsistencies in the dates, access times, metadata discrepancies. Nothing a prosecutor would consider relevant without strong evidence of manipulation. Like a witness who heard Caleb Crane threatening someone, talking about making it look like somebody else did it. Clara frowned. "You have a witness?" Lorena hesitated. She couldn't expose the girls yet. "I'm investigating that possibility. Well, whoever it is, they'll need more than words. Noah's defense is focusing on technicalities, claiming the evidence was illegally obtained. Nobody's questioning its authenticity." "That's strange," Lorena reflected. "If Noah's innocent, why isn't he saying the evidence was forged?" "Maybe he doesn't know." Or maybe, Clara left the thought hanging. Maybe he's protecting someone, Lorena finished. Like a brother. Clara drank her coffee, avoiding Lorena's eyes. I'm not asking what you're up to. I don't want to know. But be careful, Lorena. The Crane family has powerful connections. If Caleb really did what you suggest, he won't hesitate to silence anyone who might expose him. I've considered that, Lorena said, thinking of the 2 children who might be the key to the whole case. That's why I'm being discreet. Clara nodded, standing up. The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. If you have something, you need it before then. After Clara left, Lorena remained at the table, leafing through the documents in the envelope. Photos of a crime scene, though there was no physical crime, just a digital one. Copies of financial records showing suspicious transfers. Documents that supposedly proved Noah's guilt. To the untrained eye, it looked airtight. But after 15 years of investigating corruption, Lorena had developed a 6th sense for when something was off. And everything about this case seemed off. Back at her apartment, Lorena organized the new information on her improvised mural. She needed to see Lily and Leia again, show them some photos to confirm Caleb's identity, but she feared exposing them to more danger. For now, she would keep contact minimal, using the diner waitress as a go-between. She spread out several photos on the table, shots of Caleb at various social events, some with Noah, some alone. She prepared them to show the girls at their next meeting. Her theory was taking shape. Caleb set up his brother. He forged evidence, possibly with help from someone inside the company. But why? Envy, money, power. All options seemed plausible. She needed more information about the brothers' relationship. Lorena consulted her old files and digital archives, looking for articles she'd written about the Crane family over the years. She found some corporate profiles, notes on charity events, but nothing substantially revealing. She then turned to another contact. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. David, it's Lorena Martinez. I know it's been a while, but I need a favor. David Kim had been her photographer on many important stories. Now he worked freelance, mostly covering social events for the city's elite, the same circles the Crane brothers moved in. Lorena, wow, is it really you? It's been forever. How's life covering celebrity pieces? The slightly ironic tone didn't go unnoticed. Boring, which is why I'm after something more substantial, she replied honestly. I need information about Noah and Caleb Crane. Rumors, gossip, anything that didn't make it to the press. The not-so-united brothers, David laughed. Anything specific in mind? Their relationship, how they interacted. Was there tension? Well, that wasn't exactly a secret in the inner circles. Caleb always resented the fact that Noah took control of the company, even though he was younger. There were some very awkward moments at certain events. Lorena took notes quickly. What do you mean, awkward? Quiet arguments in corners, Caleb drinking too much and making snarky comments. One time last year, I heard him telling someone that Noah didn't deserve their father's legacy. Of course, it was all behind the scenes. In public, they were the perfect family. Do you think Caleb would be capable of sabotaging his own brother? There was a pause on the line. Lorena, what are you getting into? Just answer me. It's important. David sighed. Yes. Absolutely yes. Honestly, I'm surprised it took this long. A chill went down Lorena's spine. It wasn't just conspiracy theory. There was a real motive, a history, a pattern of behavior. I need photos of them together. All you have, especially the unpublished ones. I can get those, but Lorena, be careful. The Cranes have friends everywhere. After hanging up, Lorena looked at the evidence board she'd created. Something important was missing. How to protect her key witnesses. Lily and Leia still lived on the streets, vulnerable to anyone who wanted to silence them. She needed a safe place for them, but couldn't just bring them permanently to her apartment without raising suspicion. There were legal complications, custody issues, and the risk of Caleb discovering them. She needed a better plan. She thought of Clara, who knew trustworthy social workers, or David, who had connections with discreet shelters. But each option brought new risks, involving more people in the secret. For the time being, she would meet the twins in neutral places, always changing locations, never establishing a pattern. She needed more time to gather solid evidence before taking the next step. Deciding to fully investigate before publishing seemed more right every hour. This wasn't just a story. It was a mission for justice, for Noah Crane, wrongfully accused, for Lily and Leah, who risked everything to speak the truth, and for herself, a journalist who had lost her way but now found renewed purpose. She looked again at the board, at the lines connecting facts, at the faces of Noah and Caleb, at her notes about two small witnesses no one else had heard. She knew every move had to be careful, every source double-checked, every theory tested. She would protect Lily and Leah without alarming Caleb. Because if she was right, she wasn't just uncovering corporate fraud or a typical corruption case. She was exposing a family betrayal, a meticulous plan to destroy a brother, and people capable of that wouldn't hesitate to eliminate an intrusive reporter and two inconvenient young witnesses. The afternoon sun heated the city sidewalks, creating waves of heat rising from the asphalt. Lily and Leah walked hand in hand, as they always did when venturing far from their hideout. Their meeting with Lorena days before had changed something in them. They were no longer just invisible survivors. Now they were important witnesses. "Do you think the reporter lady will really help the man in jail?" Leah asked, hopping over a sidewalk crack. Lily shrugged, always the cautious one. "Maybe. Adults promise a lot of things. But she listened to us. Nobody ever listens to us." On that, Lily had to agree. Lorena was different. She hadn't treated them like ghosts or nuisances. She'd looked them in the eye, asked questions, believed them. And most importantly, she hadn't forced them into any official shelter that might separate them. "She told us to be careful," Lily recalled, "not to talk to anyone else about what we saw." They were in a commercial area, searching for leftover food or a quick job that might earn a few coins. That's when they passed by an electronics store, its window filled with TVs, all tuned to the same channel. Leah stopped abruptly, squeezing her sister's hand so hard it hurt. "Lily," she whispered, voice trembling. "Look!" On the biggest screen in the center, a well-dressed man was speaking to reporters. The caption read, "Caleb Crane, brother of Noah, takes over Crane Enterprises." It was him. The man with the black briefcase. The one with the golden watch. The same face they had seen that night, arguing in front of the building. The same man who threatened to make something look like somebody else's doing. "It's him," Leah murmured, as if scared he might hear her through the glass. "The briefcase man." Lily stood frozen, staring at the face on the screen. Now it made even more sense. He wasn't just some random stranger. He was the brother of the man who was arrested, are committed to upholding a legacy of excellence. Despite the tragic betrayal we all feel, Caleb Crane was saying, his voice smooth and composed, nothing like the threatening tone he'd used that night. A woman approached the girls. "So sad, isn't it? Such a respected family," she commented, not expecting an answer. Lily pulled Leah away, both hurrying off as fast as they could without actually running. They turned one corner, then another, walking faster and faster. "We have to tell Lorena," Leah said, breathless. "Now we know who he is." "Will she believe us?" Lily asked, always skeptical. "She already believed us once. And now we have a name. He's the brother of the guy who was arrested." Lily nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Let's go to that newspaper building where she works. She showed us the address last time. Remember?" Leah agreed, and they changed direction, now walking with renewed purpose. They traveled nearly an hour, crossing increasingly busy neighborhoods, until they spotted the newspaper office, an old red brick building with large glass windows. Outside, they hesitated. The place looked intimidating, with well-dressed people rushing in and out. Who would pay attention to two raggedy kids? "We go in together," Lily decided finally. "If anyone tries to stop us, we say it's urgent. We need to speak to Lorena Martinez." With newfound courage, they passed through the revolving doors, ignoring curious and suspicious glances. A security guard raised his eyebrows upon seeing them, But before he could approach, the girls spotted Lorena crossing the lobby with a stack of papers in her arms. "Miss Lorena," Leia called, her high voice echoing in the large space. Lorena turned, surprised. For a moment, she didn't recognize them. Then her eyes widened. "Girls, what are you doing here?" "We saw him," Leia blurted, breathless. "On TV, the briefcase man." Lorena quickly scanned around, noticing curious glances from colleagues. This wasn't the place for that conversation. "Come with me," she said softly, leading them out of earshot. She guided them down a side corridor to a small, empty meeting room. She closed the door and drew the blinds. "Now, tell me exactly what you saw," she asked, placing a recorder on the table. "It's important." "He was on TV," Lily began excitedly. "The guy we saw that night. The name under him said Caleb Crane. And he was talking about the man who got arrested," Leia added, saying sad things, like he was worried. "He's the brother of the man who got arrested?" Lily asked, looking straight at Lorena. Lorena nodded slowly, her expression serious. "Yes. Caleb and Noah Crane are brothers." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "Are you absolutely sure it's the same man you saw that night, the one with the briefcase?" "Totally sure," they replied in unison. "He had the same golden watch," added Leia. "It was shining on TV when he moved his arm." Lorena took a deep breath. The puzzle pieces were coming together with frightening clarity. She saw a security guard walk down the corridor, eyeing the room suspiciously. "We can't stay here," she decided. "Let's go somewhere safer." They discreetly left through a side door, avoiding the main lobby. Along the way, Lorena phoned her editor, making up an excuse that she felt sick and needed to go home. A small lie she'd pay for later, but necessary in the moment. "Where are we going?" Lily asked as they walked quickly. "To my personal workspace," Lorena said with a slight smile. "My apartment. We can talk there without interruptions." 20 minutes later, they entered Lorena's small but cozy apartment. The girls looked around curiously, immediately noticing the improvised investigation board on the wall, filled with photos, clippings, and notes about the Crane case. "Wow," Leia murmured. "It looks like a detective movie." Lorena laughed. "It's a bit like that, yes." "Have a seat. I'll fix something to eat while we talk." While Lorena busied herself in the kitchen, the girls settled timidly on the couch, still fascinated by the board. Soon, Lorena returned with sandwiches, milk, and some fruit, a feast for children used to scraps. "Help yourselves," she encouraged. "Now, I want to hear everything." From the beginning. Between hungry bites, the twins began telling their story, how they were looking for food near the financial district, how they hid behind dumpsters when they saw the two men arguing. "He was really mad," Lily explained. "First talking on the phone, then the other man came. And they started arguing," Leia went on. "The man with the watch, Caleb, gave the other man a briefcase. The other man said he wouldn't do something, that it was illegal." Lily frowned, trying to recall the exact words. Then Caleb said, "Either you do it, or I'll make it look like you did." Lorena felt a shiver run down her spine. That was practically a confession of framing someone. "You two were close enough to hear all this clearly." The girls nodded. "We have good ears," Leia explained. "On the street, you need to hear everything. And see without being seen," Lily added. Lorena looked at them with a mix of admiration and sadness. So young and already so adept at survival. As they finished detailing the encounter, the golden watch, the black briefcase, and the threatening tone, one question loomed larger in Lorena's mind. "Why are you living on the streets?" she finally asked, after they finished describing the confrontation. "Where are your parents?" A heavy silence settled over the room. The twins shared that silent conversation they often had. Lily spoke up, her voice suddenly sounding far older than a child's. "Our mom died, almost 2 years ago." "She got very, very sick," Leia added, eyes downcast. "What about your dad?" Lorena pressed gently. "He vanished," Lily answered bluntly. "Right after she died. He said he was going to get medicine and never came back." Lorena's heart tightened. It was a tragically common story. Children abandoned in a system that rarely saw them. "We had no other relatives," Leia continued, Neighbors took care of us for a while, but then some people came who wanted to take us to a place with other kids, Lily explained, but they were going to separate us, put us in different homes. We ran away, Leia finished. Better to stay together on the streets than be apart in homes. Lorena took a deep breath, trying to contain the emotion welling inside her. Two children who chose hunger and cold over being separated, who had survived alone for so long, who had had the courage to help a stranger when they saw an injustice. And now those same children were in danger because of what they knew. You can't go back to the street, Lorena said firmly. It's not safe, not now. Why? Lily asked, suspicious. Because what you know is valuable and dangerous. Lorena leaned closer, looking them in the eye. If Caleb Crane finds out there are witnesses who can prove he set his brother up. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The girls understood street dangers better than most adults. But we have nowhere to go. Leia's voice was small. Lorena looked at them. Two children the world had treated so cruelly, yet who still carried a spark of goodness and justice. The decision came from her heart even before her mind could analyze it. "Oh, you're coming home with me," she declared, surprising even herself with the firmness of her tone. "You'll stay here until we sort this out." The girls eyed her warily, too used to disbelieve any offer that sounded too good. "Why?" Lily asked directly. "Why would you help us?" Lorena could have cited many reasons: their value as witnesses, her chance to salvage her career with this story, justice for Noah Crane. All would be true but incomplete. "Because you deserve someone to believe in you," she answered honestly. "Because you were brave enough to speak up when it would have been easier to stay silent. And because," she hesitated, swallowing a lump in her throat, "because no one should be alone in this world." The twins looked at each other, sharing one of those silent twin conversations again. After a moment, they both nodded. "Okay," Lily agreed. "But if we don't like it, we leave." "Deal," Lorena smiled, extending her hand. "Is that a pact?" Four small hands settled on hers, a silent agreement between three people brought together by fate in the most unexpected way. While the girls finished eating, Lorena fetched sheets and blankets from her closet. She improvised a mattress on the floor of her small office, stacking pillows around it to make it cozier, like a little fort. "It's not much," she said, suddenly self-conscious about her modest apartment. "But it's safe." "It's paradise," Leia murmured, stroking the soft blanket in awe. Lily remained more reserved, but her eyes shone with an emotion she tried to hide. Later, after a hot bath, probably their first in weeks, the girls settled on the makeshift bed. Lorena brought warm milk with honey, sitting beside them. "Tomorrow we need to plan our next step," she said. "What you know can help free Noah Crane, but we have to be careful with how we use this information." "Are you going to write about it in the newspaper?" Leia asked. Lorena shook her head. "No, not yet. We need more evidence first. And we need to make sure you're both safe." "The bad man, Caleb, will be mad if he finds out we saw him," Lily said, stating what they were all thinking. "He won't find out," Lorena promised. "I'll protect you." When the lights went out and the apartment fell into darkness, Lorena stayed awake, thinking about the consequences of her decision. She had offered her home to two strangers. She was about to take on one of the most powerful men in the city. She was diving into an investigation that could either restore or completely destroy her career. And yet, hearing the soft breathing of the sleeping girls, she knew she couldn't have done otherwise. In the next room, Lily and Leia slept side by side, as they always had. But for the first time in a long while, they didn't need to keep one eye open, ready for the slightest sound. For the first time, they could simply be children. "Do you think it'll work out?" Leia whispered, not yet fully asleep. "I don't know," Lily answered honestly. "But she heard us." That's a start. On the living room wall, the investigation board waited, pieces of a puzzle still incomplete. Tomorrow, with the help of two small witnesses, Lorena would start fitting them together. The truth was within reach, and for the first time, she had allies no one would ever suspect. A week had passed since Lily and Leia arrived at Lorena's apartment. They adapted surprisingly well, as if they had just been waiting for a safe place to truly relax. They still had occasional nightmares and odd habits, like stashing food in their pockets or waking up at the slightest noise. But gradually, a routine settled in. Lorena worked remotely whenever possible, claiming she was researching a big story. She wasn't lying. She just left out the part about her main sources living in her home. That morning, while the girls were drawing at the kitchen table, Lorena made a call she'd been postponing. "Clara Wilson, it's Lorena Martinez. We need to talk urgently." Not on the phone. 2 hours later, Lorena sat in a discreet cafe in a residential neighborhood, far from downtown and the usual journalist or corporate lawyer hangouts. She'd left the girls with an elderly neighbor, the only person she trusted enough. Clara arrived on time, looking elegant in a grey suit that contrasted with her concerned expression. "I hope this is important, Lorena. I left a prep meeting for the preliminary hearing." "It is about the hearing, and your client." Lorena glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then slid a folder across the table. "I have witnesses who saw Caleb Crane arguing with someone 3 days before Noah's arrest. He explicitly threatened, 'I'll make it look like someone else did it.' My guess? He was talking about framing his brother." Clara looked skeptical, but she picked up the folder. "What kind of witnesses?" "Reliable," Lorena answered evasively, "but vulnerable. I can't give details yet." The lawyer skimmed through the detailed notes Lorena had written, based on the twins' accounts. "This isn't enough for a court, Lorena. That's why I need your help. You have access to internal records from the company that I can't get. We need to find a link." Clara hesitated, clearly torn between professional skepticism and her own gut feeling that something was off about this case from the start. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Check the company's system access logs in the days before the alleged illegal transfers. See who accessed Noah's account, from where to, and at what times. Look for unusual patterns." Clara thought for a moment. "We've done basic checks, but not with that specific focus." She paused. "What do you know about the relationship between the brothers?" "I know it wasn't as harmonious as it looked. Caleb resented for years that Noah, the younger one, took over the company when their father died." "That's not exactly a secret, but also not common knowledge," Clara said, now more intrigued. "Noah never wanted to air their dirty laundry. He always protected Caleb, even when what?" Clara sighed, lowering her voice. "He was a client of another lawyer at our firm. Caleb almost faced charges for market manipulation 3 years ago. Noah stepped in, took responsibility for some questionable decisions, made deals. He protected his brother." Lorena felt a chill, the missing piece. "And now Caleb isn't returning the favor. In fact," Clara mused, "if your suspicions are correct, he's doing the opposite, using Noah's tendency to protect him against him." The two women looked at each other, the same idea forming simultaneously. "Noah knows," Lorena said. "He knows or suspects it was Caleb, so he's not claiming the evidence was fabricated. He's still protecting his brother." "Misplaced family loyalty," Clara sighed. "He refuses to point the finger at Caleb, even if it means staying in jail." "We need hard proof," Lorena decided. "Something Noah can't ignore," Clara agreed, checking her watch. "Let's meet again in 2 days. I'll investigate access logs, suspicious activities, anything to support your theory. And I'll dig deeper into the motives. Always follow the money, right?" 2 days later, Clara arrived at the same cafe with an expression of both triumph and worry. Without any small talk, she placed a flash drive on the table. "You were right," she said quietly. "All the incriminating documents were first accessed under Caleb's login, then under Noah's." "He could claim he was just reviewing his brother's documents," Lorena noted. "Yes, except the metadata shows those documents were created while Noah was on a flight to Seattle. He was literally in the air with no internet when his login supposedly created the files." Lorena smiled, feeling that familiar thrill that comes with a significant discovery. "What about the transfers?" "All initiated from an IP registered to Caleb's personal computer, even though they used Noah's credentials. Our experts initially didn't catch it because they assumed Noah might have been using his brother's computer, but he wasn't. Not according to the building's access logs. Noah wasn't in Caleb's office on those days." Lorena picked up the flash drive, sensing how its tiny weight contrasted with the magnitude of its contents. Is this enough for court? Combined with the twins' testimony about the explicit threat, enough to at least postpone the preliminary hearing and launch an investigation into Caleb, and to get Noah out temporarily? Possibly. Clara hesitated. But Lorena, this still doesn't explain the motive. Why now? The brothers seem to be getting along for the past few years, at least publicly. Lorena slid another folder across the table. The classic motive: money. I've been investigating. Caleb has significant gambling debts, over $2 million. And recently, Noah started questioning some risky investments Caleb made in the company's name. Clara looked through the documents, her concern deepening. Where did you get all this? I have my sources, Lorena said, thinking of David, her old photographer now mingling with the elite and overhearing far more than people realized. The point is that Noah was tightening controls, possibly planning to cut down Caleb's autonomy in the company. So Caleb acted first, Clara concluded, seeing how the pieces fit. With Noah in jail, he takes full control and gains unlimited access to company funds to cover his personal debts. Clara gathered the papers, her face grave. I'm taking this to the full legal team today. We can request an emergency hearing and present the new evidence. What about my witnesses? For now, keep them safe. If we go to trial, we'll need them. But hopefully, the technical evidence will be enough for the preliminary phase. Lorena nodded, relieved. The less the girls were exposed, the better. Though at some point, if the case progressed, they would likely have to testify. Keep me posted on any developments, Lorena said as Clara stood. And Clara, be careful. If Caleb realizes we know before we act officially... I'm aware, Clara replied, thinking of the two children who could blow the whole thing wide open. That's why we move quickly. The two parted ways, each heading in a different direction. As Lorena walked home, she felt a mix of triumph and apprehension. The truth was surfacing, and the web of lies was unraveling. But she also knew this was the most dangerous point. When the truth emerges, those who want it hidden become desperate. And desperate people rarely play fair. She quickened her pace, thinking of the girls waiting for her. The small witnesses whose sharp observations had started it all. She had to protect them, not just for the case, but because in just 1 week, they had become much more than sources. They had become her responsibility, one she hadn't expected but now couldn't imagine giving up. In her pocket, the flash drive seemed to throb with the truths it contained, enough evidence to begin dismantling Caleb's carefully built fraud. But Lorena knew one piece of the puzzle still remained. Noah needed to know the truth, and more importantly, he needed to stop protecting the brother who had betrayed him. Meanwhile, across town, Clara walked into her office with a clear mission. And in another part of the city, in a luxurious penthouse, Caleb Crane received a discreet call from someone within the judicial system. Mr. Crane, we have a problem. Someone's looking into the corporate system access logs. The hunt was on. The first time Lorena noticed something odd was on a Tuesday morning. A dark car parked across the street, with 2 men inside. They did nothing, just watched. They could have been undercover cops, private investigators, or simply neighbors waiting for someone. But her journalistic instincts, honed by years of covering corruption, set off a silent alarm. She closed the curtains and continued her day, deciding not to alarm the girls with suspicions that might be just paranoia. After all, they were making progress. Clara had managed to delay Noah's preliminary hearing with the new evidence, and Lorena was working on an extensive story documenting the whole case. They were so close. It was Lily who confirmed her suspicions 2 days later. "Miss Lorena," the girl called from the kitchen window, where she was helping wash lunch dishes. "That man is watching again." Lorena walked over casually, as if checking the sink. Her eyes quickly spotted the figure leaning against a lamppost about 50 yards away. Tall, dark suit, sunglasses despite the cloudy sky, trying to look inconspicuous and achieving the exact opposite. "Have you seen him before?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. "Yesterday," Lily replied, "and there was a different one the day before. They take turns." A chill ran down Lorena's spine. Of course the girls noticed. They had survived on the streets with an almost supernatural ability to sense danger and know when they were being watched. "How do you know they're watching us specifically?" Lily shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "They stay in the same spot for hours, always looking at this building. When you leave, one of them follows you." "They followed me." Lorena hadn't noticed. "Yesterday, when you went to buy bread," Lily confirmed. "I saw it from the window. He kept his distance, but he was tailing you." At that moment, Leia entered the kitchen, eyes wide with worry. "Another car just showed up," she said quietly. "At the corner. There's a man inside." Lorena took a deep breath, trying to keep panic at bay. Caleb Crane had found out. Somehow he knew she was investigating. Maybe he even knew about the witnesses. It was only a matter of time before they tried something more drastic than mere surveillance. "Should we leave?" Leia asked, body tense with the familiarity of someone who's had to flee many times. The question pierced Lorena like a spear. These children, who had just begun to find some stability, were ready to pack up and run again. That was their life. Never belonging, never settling, always running. "No," Lorena decided firmly. "We're not running. This is our home." The words startled Lorena as much as they did the girls. Our home. When had her little apartment become a shared home? When had these two children, strangers until recently, become so important? "But they're dangerous," Lily pointed out, ever practical. "That briefcase man, Caleb, sent them." "Probably," Lorena agreed. "But they can't touch us. Not without consequences." She reached for the phone and dialed a number. "Clara? It's Lorena. We have a problem. I'm being watched." "Yes, I'm sure." The conversation was brief. Clara promised to contact a judge friend to get a temporary protective order. She would also speed up efforts to present the evidence against Caleb. "As for your special sources," Clara said carefully, "you need to keep them completely out of sight." "Understood. We're taking precautions." After hanging up, Lorena gathered the girls in the living room. They needed a plan, and the children deserved to know the truth of the situation. "Listen carefully," she began, sitting so she was at their level. "Those men probably work for Caleb Crane. They found out we're investigating, but they don't know exactly what we have." "Do they know about us?" Leia asked, her voice small. "They might suspect I have witnesses, but I doubt they know who you are. They just think you're kids I'm helping." There was no guarantee of that, of course, but Lorena wanted to ease the girls' immediate fears. "For now, we'll take some precautions. No standing near windows. No going out alone, ever. And if anyone rings the bell, don't open the door unless I say it's safe." The twins nodded solemnly. For children their age, they absorbed instructions with impressive seriousness. "We know how to hide," Lily assured. "But I don't want you hiding," Lorena replied, taking both their small hands. "I want you to live, to play, to feel safe. We just need to be careful for a few more weeks. After we resolve this, everything will be okay." "And then? Will we have to leave?" Leia's question hung in the air, laced with both fear and hope. Lorena hadn't thought that far ahead. When she took them in, she was thinking only of their immediate safety as witnesses. But each day, each small moment, drawing at the kitchen table, bedtime stories, little discoveries about their likes and dislikes, had woven connections she never thought possible in so short a time. The reporter who had lived alone, focused only on her career, now worried about mealtimes and vitamins, about nightmares and talk of the future. "No," she finally answered, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "You won't have to go unless you want to." The twins' eyes widened in unison. "Really?" Lily asked, still cautious. "We can stay," Leia added, her hope overflowing in her voice. Lorena nodded, feeling tears unexpectedly sting her eyes. "If you want, this could be permanent, legal, official, after all this is over." Her words hung in the air, filled with promise and possibility. Then, in a movement so sudden it caught her off guard, both girls flung themselves into her arms, hugging her with the desperate strength of those who finally find safe harbor after a long storm. "We'll stand up to those bad men," Leia promised, her face buried in Lorena's shoulder. "We've faced worse," Lily added, ever pragmatic, even in emotional moments. Lorena hugged them back, feeling a lump in her throat. How could two so young have faced so many hardships, and how could they still hold on to this capacity to trust, to embrace, to love? "You're not alone anymore," she murmured into their hair, a promise to herself more than to them. Never again. Outside, the men continued their watch, unaware of the small moment of transformation happening inside the apartment they monitored. They couldn't know they were witnessing, from a distance, the birth of a family formed in the unlikeliest way, by chance, by courage, and by a shared sense of justice, a family now prepared to face any threat, together. The Metropolitan Detention Center was a grey, austere building surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. Lorena had been there many times throughout her career, interviewing criminals for her reports. She never imagined she'd come back to defend someone's innocence. "I brought all the documents," Clara said as they walked through the parking lot toward the entrance. "Including the IP logs and metadata inconsistencies," Lorena nodded, feeling the weight of the folder she carried. Inside were drawings by Lily and Leia, surprisingly detailed sketches of the man they saw, the golden watch, the black briefcase. Kids have their own way of capturing details adults often ignore. "Do you think he'll believe us?" Clara hesitated. "Noah is extremely loyal. He's always protected Caleb ever since they were kids. But he's also a fair man if the evidence is convincing enough." They passed through security, handed over their belongings, and were searched. The procedure was strict, even for an attorney and her assistant, the cover Lorena used to gain entry. The attorney visitation room was simple: a metal table, 4 chairs, grey walls, no windows, a camera in the upper corner, no audio. "Does he know we're coming?" Lorena asked, nervously straightening the papers on the table. "He knows I have new evidence. I didn't mention you or the witnesses." The metal door swung open with a metallic clang. Noah Crane entered, escorted by a guard. He looked thinner than in recent photos, with dark circles under his eyes and a pallor that spoke of sleepless nights. Still, he stood tall, dignified. The orange prison uniform seemed completely out of place on a man like him. "Clara," he greeted with a faint smile, before noticing Lorena. Confusion briefly crossed his face. "I didn't expect company." "This is Lorena Martinez," Clara introduced, "an investigative journalist. She's working on your case." Noah frowned, clearly suspicious. "I didn't authorize any—" "She has information you need to hear," Clara interrupted. "Please, sit." After a moment's hesitation, Noah complied. The guard left, slamming the heavy door behind him. "Mr. Crane," Lorena began, "on the night of your arrest, 2 girls shouted that you were innocent, that they saw who did it. Do you remember that?" Noah looked surprised. There was so much confusion, so many people." He paused. "Yes, someone was shouting something, but I couldn't make it out. They were 2 homeless twins, very young. They witnessed something 3 days before your arrest, something that might prove your innocence." Lorena then carefully recounted what Lily and Leia had seen. Caleb on the phone, visibly upset. His explicit threat: "Either you do it, or I'll make it look like you did." The black briefcase, the golden watch. Noah's face cycled through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, hurt, and finally a reluctant understanding. "This is—" his voice faltered. "How can I believe the testimony of 2 street kids I've never met?" Clara opened her folder, spreading the documents on the table. "It's not just their testimony. We analyzed the company's system logs. The documents incriminating you were accessed first by Caleb's login, then yours. Some were created while you were flying to Seattle with no internet access." Noah studied the logs, his face growing paler. "And the bank transfers were initiated from an IP tied to Caleb's personal computer," Clara continued, "while using your login credentials." "That might just mean someone else was on his computer," Noah argued, but there was little conviction in his voice. "The building's security logs show you weren't in his office on those days," Clara countered. "And there's this." Lorena slid a photo of Caleb at a luxury casino across the table, dated only a few weeks before Noah's arrest. Your brother has major gambling debts, over 2 million, and you'd started questioning some risky company investments he made. Noah held the photo with trembling hands. Where did you get this? I have sources, Lorena replied. But what really matters are the girls. They have no reason to lie. They didn't even know who you were until they saw Caleb on TV after your arrest. Noah set the documents aside, running his hands over his face in a gesture of profound exhaustion. Why would Caleb do this? We're family. I always protected him. Maybe that's the problem, Lorena said gently. You always protected him, even when he messed up. Maybe he started believing he'd never face consequences. Silence hung in the air. Noah stared at the wall, but his eyes seemed to see something far away. Deep down you knew, Clara said softly. Part of you suspected, right? Noah nodded almost imperceptibly. There were signs. I ignored them. I preferred to think I was mistaken. Lorena opened her folder and pulled out the twins' drawings. Lily and Leia drew what they saw, the man, the watch, even the expression on his face. Noah studied the childlike sketches, pain etched across his features. The innocent lines captured perfectly the golden watch Caleb always wore, a gift from their father that he never took off. These girls, he began, his voice trembling. Where are they now? They're with me, Lorena answered. I'm protecting them. Why? Why would you care about 2 street kids? Why would they care about me? It was a fair question. Lorena gave a sad smile. They saw an injustice and tried to stop it. When everyone else believed the worst about you, 2 children that society ignores every day had the courage to speak. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he held the drawings. They saw me, he murmured, almost to himself, even when nobody else wanted to look. Something in his words echoed the twins' own experience, always invisible, always ignored. We need you to stop protecting Caleb, Clara said bluntly. The technical evidence is strong, but your testimony would make it irrefutable. He's my brother, Noah replied quietly. And he betrayed you, Lorena reminded him. He put you here while taking over everything you built. Noah closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was a new resolve. What do you need me to do? Clara looked relieved. Make a formal statement detailing your suspicions and sign off on presenting all this evidence at the review hearing. Noah nodded slowly. And the girls, will they have to testify? Eventually, yes, Lorena answered. But we're trying to keep their identities hidden as long as possible. Caleb already has men watching me. A shadow of concern crossed Noah's face. He's always been driven. When he wants something, he doesn't care about consequences. All the more reason to act quickly, Clara said, opening a legal document. We'll prepare your statement now. While Clara worked with Noah on the formalities, Lorena watched the man the girls had decided to help. She saw in him the same integrity Lily and Leia had instinctively recognized. Despite the betrayal, he still struggled with the idea of incriminating his brother, still searched for an explanation beyond greed or envy. What are they like? Noah asked suddenly, looking at Lorena. The girls, Lorena smiled, thinking of Lily and Leia waiting anxiously for her return, probably drawing or arranging their little collection of shells on the windowsill. They're brave, smart, loyal to each other, very observant. They have a strength most adults lack. Noah nodded, a faint smile on his lips. I'd like to thank them personally someday. I'm sure that'll happen, Lorena replied. When you're free. With those words, the 3 returned to their work, weaving together a truth strong enough to topple the lies that had imprisoned an innocent man. It's too risky, Lorena insisted, pacing around a meeting room at Clara's law firm. If Caleb suspects anything, Clara calmly adjusted documents in her briefcase, unflappable in the face of the journalist's worries. He won't suspect. As far as he knows, I'm simply Noah's attorney, discussing possible plea deals. It's perfectly normal at this stage. What about the recorder? Clara discreetly opened the back of her elegant wristwatch, revealing a tiny recording device, top of the line, undetectable and completely legal, as long as I'm part of the conversation. We have a court order. The days following their visit to Noah in jail had been a race against time. With his formal statement, Clara had secured authorization to investigate Caleb further. Surveillance on Lorena's apartment had increased, making it necessary for the twins to remain inside at all times. The strategy was simple but dangerous. Lure Caleb into a conversation where he might incriminate himself. The technical evidence was strong, but a confession, even partial, would be ironclad. If he admits anything, Clara explained, combined with the IP logs and witness testimony, we'll have enough to not only free Noah, but also arrest Caleb. And if he says nothing incriminating, then we rely on what we already have. Either way, the review hearing is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. This is just a potential bonus. Lorena still looked unconvinced, but she knew she had no say in this part of the operation. Her role was to protect the twins and prepare the explosive story to be released once everything was out in the open. "Be careful," she finally said. "He's already shown what he's capable of." Clara nodded, grave. "My assistant will be in the room with me, and the entire firm knows about the meeting. He won't try anything so openly." The Crane Enterprises headquarters occupied half of a skyscraper in the financial district. Caleb's office, now that he was interim CEO, was on the top floor, with a panoramic view of the city. Clara observed the clouds through the massive windows while she waited, her assistant sitting silently nearby, briefcase open and pen ready. The door opened, and Caleb Crane walked in, immaculate in his tailored suit, the famous golden watch gleaming on his wrist. He smiled with that particular confidence of powerful men who believe they're above consequences. "Clara, what a pleasant surprise," he said, extending his hand. "When my secretary mentioned my brother's attorney wanted to see me, I must admit, I was intrigued." Clara shook his hand briefly. "I appreciate you fitting me into what must be a busy schedule. As you know, Noah's review hearing is approaching." "Yes, a regrettable situation," Caleb replied, seating himself behind his imposing desk. "I do hope we can resolve it in the least painful way for the family and the company." Clara kept her professional face, revealing none of her disgust. "That's exactly why I'm here. We're considering plea deal options." "A plea deal?" Caleb raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I thought Noah was declaring himself innocent." "He is, but cases like this can drag on for years, years that would be damaging to the company's reputation, one he built." Clara paused for effect. "Even if he's innocent, sometimes it's more practical to end things quickly." Something glinted in Caleb's eyes, an undercurrent of relief and triumph, quickly masked. "I understand perfectly. And what are the terms of this deal?" "Noah would plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, possibly just probation. No actual jail time." "Interesting," Caleb murmured, drumming his fingers on the desk. "And what about the company?" "Here's the delicate point. He'd have to formally resign as president, permanently." The small smile that formed on Caleb's lips was almost imperceptible. But Clara noticed exactly what she hoped to see. "A sensible outcome under the circumstances," he commented, leaning back in his chair. "The board would welcome a swift resolution." "There's just one potential snag," Clara said, still casual. "Some inconsistencies in the evidence. Technical details about how the documents were accessed, when the transfers were made. Things that might complicate the case if it went to a full trial." Caleb's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "What sort of inconsistencies?" "IP logs, metadata. Technical stuff suggesting that maybe, and I must emphasize it's just speculation, maybe the documents weren't created directly by Noah." Caleb straightened his posture, his body language now defensive. "That sounds irrelevant. The documents were found on his computer. The transfers came from his account." "Yes, but how they got there is the question." Clara locked eyes with him. You know how modern defense lawyers are. They love technicalities." Caleb forced a tight smile. "Clara, let's be frank. What exactly are you suggesting? That maybe the plea deal interests more parties than just Noah. If there was outside help in creating those documents, that person would also benefit from a quick but discreet resolution." A heavy silence followed. Caleb studied Clara, clearly assessing her intentions and calculating risks. "Interesting hypotheses," he said at last. "But let me be equally frank. What do you really want, Clara?" "Assurances," that nothing pops up against Noah in the future, that this is the definitive end of the matter. Caleb visibly relaxed, thinking he understood her true motive. I understand completely. I can assure you that with Noah's permanent resignation, there'd be no reason for future complications. He paused, giving a slight smile. After all, the goal would already have been achieved. And what goal is that exactly? Clara asked, keeping her tone innocent. Caleb gave a small shrug, now more confident. Stability for the company, of course. Strong leadership without distractions. Like the issues Noah was raising about some of your more recent investments? Something darkened in Caleb's eyes. Noah has outdated ideas about risk management. The company needed fresh blood, more daring directions. To cover personal debts, perhaps. The change was immediate. The smile vanished. His relaxed posture evaporated. Watch yourself, Clara. You're making dangerous accusations. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just exploring possibilities to better advise my client. Clara kept her voice calm, knowing she was treading dangerous ground. It's my job to consider all angles. Caleb studied her for a long moment, then seemed to reach a decision. Let's be clear. The situation is simple. Noah made mistakes, got caught, and now has to pay the price. If he wants a deal, great. Sign the papers, resign from the company, and we all move on. And if he decides to fight, take it to trial. A cold smile spread across Caleb's face. Then he'll lose. The evidence is solid because it was meticulously prepared. Every login, every transfer, everything done to be irrefutable. Clara leaned in slightly. Done by whom, exactly? Caleb let out a short, arrogant laugh. You're good, Clara. Very good. But not good enough. He adjusted the golden watch on his wrist. Let's just say that when you plan something for years, you learn not to leave loose ends. Or rather, you leave exactly the traces you want found. Years? Clara seemed genuinely surprised. You've been planning this for years. Noah was always the favorite, the visionary, the prodigy, he said bitterly. I was just the reliable older brother, the administrator, the support, even though I was the one keeping the company running while he played philanthropist. So when he started questioning your financial decisions, he had no right, Caleb snapped, momentarily losing control. Not after leaving the dirty work to me for years. Not after I covered his mistakes so many times. Clara stayed silent, letting him continue. It was almost too easy, Caleb went on, speaking more to himself than to Clara. His login, his digital signature, so accessible when you know the systems from the inside. He never even suspected he was being set up until the feds showed up. He suddenly remembered where he was and with whom he was speaking. The arrogant smile returned, the mask of control slipping back into place. But that's all speculation, obviously. What matters now is the plea deal. Clara nodded slowly, closing her folder. I think I have all the information I need, she said, standing up. I'll discuss your perspective with my client. I hope he's sensible, Caleb replied, also standing, for everyone's sake. One last question, if I may, Clara said, hand on the door handle. Does anyone else know about how the evidence was really created? Caleb's confident smile returned. Clara, the first rule of any successful operation is never involving a third party, not even trusted assistants, he said, casting a meaningful look at the young man who accompanied her. Some things are best handled personally. Wise counsel, Clara acknowledged. Thank you for your time and your candor. 3 hours later, Clara's office was buzzing with activity. Prosecutors, investigators, and Clara herself listened repeatedly to the recording, each pass revealing more incriminating details. It's practically a confession, remarked one of the prosecutors, impressed. He admits to planning everything, forging evidence, using his brother's login. Combined with the technical records and the witness statements, Clara added, we have a solid case. What about the witnesses, the girls? Asked the lead investigator. Will we need them in court? Clara glanced at Lorena, who had just arrived. With this recording, maybe not. But their formal depositions are already on file, just in case. The important thing now, the chief prosecutor interrupted, is to act quickly. If Caleb realizes he's been trapped, he might try to flee or destroy more evidence. Events unfolded at breakneck speed in the following hours. An arrest warrant was issued for Caleb Crane. Simultaneously, a team of federal agents raided his mansion and offices, seizing computers and documents. The arrest took place in the company parking lot, captured by security cameras that soon fueled every news outlet. The mighty Caleb Crane, handcuffed and stunned, being led into a police car. The shock on his face showed that, until the last moment, he believed he was above consequences. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Noah Crane received the news of his imminent release. The charges against him had been dropped, his innocence recognized by the authorities. Thursday of the next morning, the press crowded around the entrance of the Metropolitan Detention Center. The story had blown up overnight, the innocent man freed, the real culprit arrested, a plot fit for a movie. When Noah finally emerged, he looked both exhausted and relieved. Clara walked on one side of him. On the other, surprisingly, was Lorena. "Mr. Crane, how do you feel about being released? Are you going to sue the state for wrongful imprisonment? What do you plan to do about your brother?" Questions bombarded him from every side. Noah raised a hand, asking for silence, and the reporters, surprisingly, complied. "I am grateful that justice has finally prevailed, he said simply. "I thank everyone who believed in my innocence and worked to prove it." "Are you returning immediately to the presidency of Crane Enterprises?" someone shouted from the back. "There are more important matters right now," he replied. "The company is in capable hands while everything is sorted out." "Are you angry at your brother for betraying you?" a bolder reporter asked. Noah remained silent for a moment. "My feelings about my brother are a private matter," he finally said. "The judicial system will do its job as it should." It was clear he wouldn't feed the media spectacle. No inflammatory accusations, no promises of revenge, just dignified composure, which ironically earned him more respect than any dramatic outburst. "One last question," insisted a veteran journalist. "Who do we credit for uncovering the truth? Who exposed Caleb's scheme?" Noah looked at Lorena, who gave him a subtle nod. "If I'm free today," he said, voice suddenly thick with emotion, "it's because two kids nobody listened to chose to speak up. Two young observers who saw the truth when everyone else was blinded by a well-crafted lie." A murmur swept through the crowd. This wasn't the answer they expected. "Children? Which children?" The questions resumed, more urgent this time. But Noah, Clara, and Lorena were already heading toward a waiting car, ignoring the growing clamor. Some stories don't belong in the headlines. Some truths are too precious for public consumption. In Lorena's apartment, Lily and Leah watched it all on TV, their little faces lit up by smiles at seeing Noah finally freed. The truth they had witnessed and fought for now had enough shape and strength to topple the powerful and lift up the just. And for two small girls the world had forgotten, it was more than justice, it was validation. For the first time, their voices mattered. They had been heard. The distant hum of the city drifted through Lorena's apartment windows that Sunday afternoon. 3 weeks had passed since Noah Crane's release and his brother's arrest. The dust was settling, although the media continued to milk every possible angle of the story that had shocked the country. Lorena was in the kitchen making a snack, while Lily and Leah drew at the living room table when the doorbell rang. The girls immediately exchanged wary looks, that ingrained reflex from life on the streets. "It's okay," Lorena said, drying her hands. "We're expecting a visitor today." She walked to the door and looked through the peephole before opening. Outside stood Noah Crane, holding a package wrapped in colorful paper. He looked very different from the last time she'd seen him leaving the prison, his tired expression replaced by one of calm, though his eyes still bore the marks of a man who had stared into an abyss and survived. "I hope I'm not late," he said when Lorena opened the door. "Actually, you're perfectly on time," she smiled, stepping aside. "They're excited to finally meet you." In the living room, the twins remained seated, quiet and alert, their drawings briefly forgotten in the presence of their visitor. Lorena noticed how they sat up straighter, how their small hands found each other for mutual support. "Lily, Leah," Lorena said softly, "this is Noah Crane. The man you helped." Noah advanced slowly, careful like someone approaching wild animals that might bolt at any sudden move. He stopped a respectful distance away and smiled. "Hello," he said simply. "It's an honor to finally meet you." The girls observed him with that evaluating look Lorena knew well, the look that saw through appearances and judged a person's true nature. After a moment, both relaxed almost imperceptibly. "You look better now," Lily commented, always the more direct. Noah laughed, the genuine sound of someone both surprised and delighted. "I'm much better, thanks to you." "Miss Lorena says you do good things," Leia added, curiosity overcoming her shyness. "You help people like us." "That's true," Noah nodded. "Or at least I try. But today I came to thank the two people who helped me when I needed it most." He stepped a bit closer, and to everyone's surprise, including his own, knelt in front of the girls so he was at their eye level. The gesture, unplanned, came naturally, a sign of respect that transcended their difference in age and social standing. "You saved my life," he said, voice thick with genuine emotion. "When everyone believed the worst of me, you saw the truth. You spoke up when it would have been easier to stay silent." The twins watched him with wide eyes, clearly unused to adults kneeling before them or addressing them with such respect. "That's why," Noah continued, "I want to thank you and tell you that you can ask for anything. Whatever is within my reach, I'll do for you." A significant silence filled the room. From the kitchen doorway, Lorena held her breath. The girls looked at each other, having one of those silent twin conversations. Finally, they turned to Noah, and Leia, normally the quieter one, spoke. "We just wanted a family," she said, her voice small but firm. "We're tired of being alone." Lily nodded, backing her up. "Miss Lorena is nice, but we know we can't stay forever," she added. "And we don't want to go to different places." The simplicity and depth of their request struck Noah like a revelation. He had expected them to ask for gifts, maybe a new home for Lorena, or scholarships for the future. He never imagined these children, who had faced so much, would ask for the one thing money couldn't directly buy. He looked at Lorena, whose eyes were misty, and then back at the girls. "Would you like to come live with me?" he asked, the idea forming in his mind as he spoke the words, "permanently, like a real family." Again, the girls glanced at each other, gauging this unexpected offer. "Do you live alone?" Lily asked, practical as ever. "Yes. In a house that's not too big, but with enough room for 2 more people. There's a yard where we could plant things if you like that." "And we'd stay together," Leia insisted. "Forever. Always together," Noah promised. "I'd take care of both of you. I'd be your legal guardian. Eventually, if we're all comfortable, maybe we'd do a formal adoption." Silence again, as the girls processed something both profound and unexpected. Lorena stayed quiet, respecting the moment, though her heart felt divided between the joy of seeing such an opportunity for the twins and the sadness of letting them go. "Can we think about it?" Lily finally asked. "Of course," Noah said, rising to his feet. "It's not a decision to make in a few minutes. Take all the time you need. In the meantime," he added, extending the package he was carrying, "I brought something for you." Leia accepted the gift, unwrapping it with almost reverent care, as though the bright paper was as precious as what was inside. 2 identical plush bears and a book of illustrated stories. "Miss Lorena said you like bedtime stories," Noah explained. "Thought you might enjoy a new book." The girls smiled, their first genuine smiles directed at him, and something warmed in Noah's chest that had been cold for too long. The rest of the visit was calm. Noah, Lorena, and the girls shared the snack Lorena had made, talking about simple things, how the girls were settling in, which stories they liked, what foods they preferred. Noah, with newly found sensitivity, avoided questions about their past or any mention of his own recent ordeal. There would be time for heavier subjects later. Today was about building bridges. When he finally left, promising to return soon regardless of their decision, the twins seemed thoughtful but not as nervous as before. Something in Noah's sincere presence had touched that part of them that, despite everything, still believed adults could be trustworthy. The answer came sooner than anyone expected. The next morning, Lily woke Lorena with a simple statement. We want to go with him. It wasn't an easy decision for the girls, Lorena knew. They had found security and affection in her small apartment, but they also recognized the opportunity Noah presented, not just materially, but as someone who, like them, knew what it was to be wrongly judged and then redeemed. The legal arrangements were surprisingly straightforward, thanks to Noah's influence and Lorena's unwavering support. Clara Wilson, the attorney who had done so much to prove Noah's innocence, personally oversaw the paperwork, ensuring no detail was overlooked. It's a new beginning for all of you, she said during their final meeting, before submitting documents to the judge. Something beautiful born from so much adversity. Within a week, the girls were moving to their new home, a modest house in the suburbs, far from the glitz and ostentation Noah's fortune could have afforded, but perfectly suited to a family in the making. The bedrooms prepared for them were simple but welcoming. Soft-colored walls, comfortable beds, shelves for books yet to be discovered, and a shared desk by the window for drawing and future studies. Noah had worked hard to create a space that felt both cozy and open to personalization, knowing the girls would need time to truly feel at home. You can change anything you want, he told them, showing them the rooms. Paint, furniture placement, I want you to feel like this is yours. We never had a room just for us, Leia murmured, running her hand over the soft comforter with near reverence. It looks like one of those fake store displays, Lily added, like we used to see in shop windows. Her comment broke Noah's heart, though he hid it well. A harsh reminder of how they had lived on the margins, always gazing at a comfortable world that seemed unattainable. It's real, he assured, sitting on the edge of one bed. And it's yours now. The first days were filled with adjustments and mutual discoveries. Noah learned that Lily was allergic to strawberries, that Leia was afraid of thunder, and that both occasionally woke in the middle of the night, terrified by nightmares they wouldn't fully describe. He learned to keep a soft light on in the hallway, to check on them subtly, to accept that some emotional scars would take time to heal. The twins, for their part, found out that Noah was terrible in the kitchen but determined to learn. His first attempts at making bread resulted in bizarre lumps of dough more akin to rocks, much to their amusement. How can a grown-up not know how to make bread? Lily asked, laughing openly as Noah stared in dismay at his culinary failure. I guess nobody's born knowing, he answered, laughing at himself. Could you teach me? For the first time, the roles reversed. The girls became the teachers, sharing the practical knowledge they'd gained from watching bakers through back windows. That afternoon of flour everywhere and genuine laughter marked a turning point in their relationship. They also discovered Noah had a contagious laugh when truly amused, and that he took their opinions very seriously, from the color of the curtains to what they wanted to learn at school. Why do you care so much about what we think? Lily asked one evening, after Noah spent 20 minutes seriously discussing which flavor of ice cream they should buy. Because you matter, he said simply, and because the best decisions are the ones we make together. Together, they wove a new normal. Shared meals with conversations about the day. Evenings reading in the living room. Noah taking over the bedtime story ritual Lorena had started. Weekends at the park, at the zoo, or just exploring the neighborhood. Lorena visited regularly, a constant and loving presence that eased the transition. A challenge arose when it was time for the girls to attend school. Neither had consistent formal education, and the idea of being separated, even for a few hours, caused them visible anxiety. Noah worked with specialized educators to develop a gradual integration plan, starting with home tutoring, then short visits to the school, and finally a regular schedule, always in the same class, a condition he insisted upon. Their academic progress surprised everyone. Despite lack of formal schooling, the twins had learned a lot on the streets, basic math from small street markets, reading from discarded newspapers, urban geography from navigating every corner for survival. They have extraordinary minds, one teacher remarked after the first month. They soak up everything like sponges. They've always been extraordinary, Noah replied, the genuine pride of a father in his voice. 6 months after moving in, the formal adoption was completed with little fanfare, just a judge, the necessary paperwork, and a small celebratory lunch with Lorena, Clara, and a few close friends. No media, no public attention. Noah had insisted on that. The girls' privacy was sacred. "It's official now," he said, showing them the framed adoption certificates. "We're legally a family." "We were already a family before the paperwork," Leia observed, with a wisdom that sometimes startled her sister. "This just tells the world what we already knew." Noah embraced them both, trying to hide the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. How could these small children, who had faced such loss, grasp so deeply what truly made a family? Around the same time, something new began to take shape in the city's old industrial district. An abandoned building was renovated, painted in bright colors and filled with welcoming spaces. The Horizon Center, as it was named, quietly opened its doors to children experiencing homelessness, offering meals, medical assistance, educational support, and most importantly, a safe place to exist without fear. "It was inspired by two very special young people," Noah explained to the staff at the private opening, "who taught me that sometimes all we need is for someone to truly see and hear us." The center operated under a different philosophy than typical institutional shelters. No pressure, no mandates. Kids could come and go as they pleased, find the kind of help they needed at the moment, be it a hot meal, a shower and clean clothes, a chance to return to school, or legal guidance. A carefully selected multidisciplinary team worked with each child individually, respecting their stories, fears, and dreams. And although no one besides Lorena and a select few knew, many of the center's policies and practices were directly inspired by Lily and Leia's experiences and all they had wished for while living on the streets. The twins never visited the center. Part of Noah's agreement with them was keeping them completely out of the spotlight, letting them grow up like any other kids. But they knew it existed, and sometimes helped assemble donations or prepare welcome kits for new visitors. "We're helping other kids like we used to be," Lily once said, as they labeled hygiene kits, "even if they don't know it's us." "Like secret superheroes," Leia added, smiling. Noah, watching them work together so diligently, thought about how they had once been heroes themselves, when no one else believed in him. 1 year after Noah's release, on a quiet winter evening, the three of them were cozily settled on the living room couch. Outside, snow fell softly, wrapping the world in a special hush. Inside, a fire crackled in the fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Lily and Leia, now visibly healthier and more confident than the day they shouted in the crowd, were snuggled under a big blanket on either side of Noah. They had just finished a bedtime story and now rested in that comfortable silence that exists only among people who truly feel safe together. "Dad," Leia said gently, the still new title they'd chosen on their own just recently, "do you think other kids like us will find families too?" The question, coming out of nowhere, caught Noah off guard. He thought carefully before answering. "I hope so," he replied honestly. "That's why the Horizon Center is there. To help find a path for each child, whether it means reuniting them with their families, finding them new families, or simply giving them a place where they can feel they belong." "We were lucky," Lily mused, "to have you and Aunt Lorena." "I was even luckier," Noah said, pulling them closer, "to have you both." Silence returned, now filled with meaning and belonging. The twins, warm and safe, began drifting off to sleep, nestled against the adoptive father who had entered their lives in the unlikeliest way. Noah gazed at them, these little saviors who had transformed his life in ways he never imagined. They weren't just responsible for his physical freedom, but for a much deeper liberation, from the loneliness, the emptiness that no amount of professional success had ever filled, the emotional inertia he'd been trapped in. They heard me, he thought, contemplating the improbable miracle of their newly formed family. And I heard them back. That's how a family begins. Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing the world in white promise of renewal. Inside, 3 hearts beat in a rhythm they were slowly learning to synchronize. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.